This isn't a story from some dystopian novel. This is Brazil. Now, let's travel back to 2022. Electronic voting machines seem to wake up in the dead of night, flipping votes. Fast forward to 2023, and January 8th becomes the perfect trap. Then, 2025. Jair Bolsonaro, at 70 years old, spends 100 days under house arrest before being sentenced to 27 years for a crime that never happened. This is not justice. This is a legal trick. A judicial dictatorship created to silence the right-wing Welcome to Cyberpunk Mystery, where we expose the thread that connects rigged voting machines to endless inquests, where no defense is allowed. This is the raw, unfiltered truth of the right. The mito, as they call him, resists. But the real question is Brazil waking up? Stay with us for the full breach. This is Exposed. It all starts with what many call the seed of the coup. October 2nd, 2022. The presidential election. In the early counts, Bolsonaro is crushing it, leading Lula with 58% to 42%. Polls close at 5 p.m. sharp. Then, something strange happens. The vote counters freeze. Hours later, in the dead of night, the numbers magically shift. Suddenly, Lula is declared the winner with 50.9% of the vote. The official explanation from the Superior Electoral Court, the TSE, is that the delay was due to slower returns from remote regions. They called it normal, but for millions on the right, it smelled like a hacker injection. An army audit of the voting machines was requested, but the Supreme Court blocked it. What about proof? Videos started surfacing of voting machines that weren't zeroed out before voting began. Leaked internal messages from the TSE allegedly showed discussions about adjustments. And then there was the issue of the voter rolls. Were dead people voting? Reports suggested millions of deceased individuals were still on the system, potentially casting ballots for the PT party. Whether these were fake sites or not, the voter roll appeared bloated, with some claiming as many as 3 million ghost voters. The Federal Revenue Service failed to clean up the lists, and the TSE ignored the discrepancies. Bolsonaro demanded federal intervention, but instead, on November 8th, 2022, Justice Alexandre de Moraes opened an inquest into so-called fake news against the urns. The censorship was immediate and brutal. Social media accounts of Bolsonaro's allies were blocked. Live streams discussing the election were taken down. The cry from the right was deafening. First, they steal the election. Then they silence you. Without this sequence of events, January 8th would have never happened. It was the spark that lit the fuse. Now let's go to January 8th, 2023. Following the controversy of the stolen urns, millions of Brazilians took to the streets. What began as a peaceful protest, in the eyes of the right, turned into the perfect ambush. They pointed to several anomalies: infiltrated agents, inciting violence, security barriers mysteriously lowered, and a suspiciously absent police force. Bolsonaro was in the United States at the time, yet the Supreme Federal Court, the SP, accused him of being the mastermind behind the entire event. Moraes' inquests led to the detention of over 1,400 people who became political prisoners, many held without trial. The families and widows of protesters who died in custody screamed of selective genocide. A federal police report in 2024 tied everything back to the anti-urn narrative, conveniently ignoring the fact that the TSE's actions had planted that very seed of doubt. From the right's perspective, this was a trap, a setup designed to justify a dictatorship. It led to mass arrests and reports of torture in prisons. For them, January 8th was Brazil's Parliament Fire Momentan event, orchestrated to seize power and crush opposition. As a result, allies like Congressman Ramagem were barred from holding office, and it began to stack its powers. The fake news inquest transformed into an endless witch hunt. From 2023 to 2024, the STF morphed into what many critics call a kangaroo court. The TSE declared Bolsonaro ineligible to run for office until 2030, not based on concrete proof of a crime, but simply for his attacks on the urn. Just as Moraes acted as the chief inquisitor, overseeing so made 20 inquests against Bolsonaro and his allies, The entire X platform, formerly Twitter, was blocked in Brazil in 2024 after Elon Musk refused to comply with censorship orders. Journalists like Alan dos Santos, a prominent conservative voice, faced extradition requests, though the US denied them. The right was quick to expose the glaring double standards. Lula, who had been convicted and imprisoned in the massive Lava Jato corruption scandal, was freed. Later, in 2025, crucial evidence from the Odebrecht case, which implicated numerous leftist politicians, was suspended by the STF. The message seemed clear. 2 sets of rules. The final act begins in August 2025. The trial against Bolsonaro kicks off, based on a massive 1,105-page indictment from the Prosecutor General's office. He is accused of leading Cor un minuto of decode d'etat, apparently coercing the military. But what about his defense? Key witnesses were never heard. The process felt rushed and predetermined. On September 11, 2025, the verdict came down. A unanimous conviction from the court's first panel. The sentence: 27 years for the violent abolition of the democratic state of law. The right's take was that it was a pure farce. The case was built on circumstantial evidence, out-of-context messages, and the weaponization of a 2021 law. Ironically, that Bolsonaro himself had signed. His appeals were swiftly rejected on November 6, 2025, again unanimously. The legal chicanery was on full display. Justices Barroso and Fuchs claimed they were voting for democracy while simultaneously ignoring fundamental legal principles like habeas corpus. Bolsonaro's allies didn't escape either. General Braga Neto, his former running mate, was sentenced to 20 years. The roar from the right grew louder. 2 weights, 2 measures. The PT steals billions and walks free, while the right goes to jail for a tweet. In October 2025, the sentence began. Bolsonaro was placed under house arrest, a move that right-wing jurists called an illegal progression for a 70-year-old who, under their interpretation of the law, should have been eligible for a more lenient regime. By November 12, 2025, he had spent 100 days with an ankle monitor. He was under 24/7 surveillance with heavily restricted visits. The right exposed this as illegal, arguing the law doesn't allow for this type of monitoring in a closed regime sentence. His defense team begged for him to be held in military custody or granted permanent house arrest. Moraes ignored their pleas. The fear of him being sent to the infamous Papuda prison became imminent. Politically, the right was thrown into crises. Bolsonaro's place party was weakened, while the establishment Centro Bloc seemed to be laughing. Allies predicted he would soon be moved to a closed prison regime, calling it Lula's revenge. On social media, the outrage exploded. The hashtag Bolsonaro imprisoned, corrupt free went viral. These 100 days of isolation meant no campaigning for the 2026 elections and constant surveillance of his family. In the eyes of his supporters, this was a clear case of political imprisonment designed to break the mito, just as opponents of the military regime were treated back in the 60s and 70s. But something else was happening. The people were waking up. Memes, rallies, and a growing movement demanding amnesty began to spread across the country. From the hacked urns to the 100-day ankle monitor, the entire chain of events has been exposed by the right as a coordinated takeover. They see the STF not as a court, but as a judicial dictatorship, stealing elections and freedoms. And he has become a symbol of resistance against it. The demands from the right are clear. Amnesty for all January 8th prisoners, a full, transparent audit of the voting urns, and the impeachment of Justice Moraes. This isn't a conspiracy theory to them. This is the reality of a Brazil polarized to its breaking point. What do you think? Is this political prison? Let us know in the comments. Press your deputies. Share this video. The truth needs to go viral. Damito doesn't. Fall the Matrix does. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an update. End of transmission, Patriots.